Hello everyone and welcome to the documentation lecture. So in this lecture, looking at its title, you can see that we're going to discuss how to correctly cite sources both in text and on a works cited page. Okay, so let's begin with the fundamentals. What is documentation? So documentation is when you give credit to your sources. And you'll recall from the syllabus video that I said that any ideas, facts, quotes, figures, pictures, etc. that you did not create or you did not come up with or your research did not produce, they have to be cited. So there are two places in where we cite things. First, it should happen in text. So this means that this is going to occur the moment we talk about the idea, the fact, the quote, the figures, etc. And then secondly, it should happen again in the works cited page. And so that's at the very end of your paper. So the in-text citation is just to give enough information to your reader to know what to look for when they go to the works cited page, so that way they can look up and find the full details of your source. Why do we document? Well, again, there's that word plagiarism, and so we are trying to not plagiarize. So that's the point of documentation, and to give credit to other people's work so that people can look up more from that source if they'd like to. So how do we document? Documentation begins with in-text citation. This is really important that we put this in there. And there's a number of ways that you can cite your source in text. But generally, and this is what I'm going to show you guys and what I would recommend to my students, there will be a lead-in sentence, and that's helpful. And that sentence is going to cite the author. So I think anytime you use a brand new author for the first, well, not brand new, but use an author for the first time in your paper, you should have a lead-in sentence that cites who they are. And then it'll also depend on whether the material is a direct quote or a paraphrase. And so we're going to talk about this in detail. So what I have here is an example quote from a textbook I like to use. It's called the Bedford St. Martin Handbook, and it's edited by Andrea Lunsford. And so here's a quote that I have taken from that textbook, and I'm going to show you a couple of ways that we can cite. So the first block here says, Lunsford states that although many people think of correctness as absolute based on unchanging rules, instructors and students know that there are rules, but they change over time. And then we have this parenthesis in 1, right? Okay, so what we've done here is we first introduce our author. We've said Lunsford. Okay, and what does she do? She's stating something, and then we separate it with a comma. That's very important. And then we give the quote in quotation marks. And then this is found on page 1. This quote comes from page 1 of the Bedford St. Martin Handbook. And so in parentheses, we're going to put 1. Now, if we had decided, you know what, I'm not going to introduce the author in the lead-in sentence as we do in the next example here, then we would structure it a little bit differently. So again, we're going to start with our quotation marks. So we're going to put anything that's in the quote in quotation marks. And then in our parenthetical citation here, we're going to put the name, and then you're going to put the page number. Okay, so what if we want to use a paraphrase? So it's essentially the same thing except with the paraphrase in the place of the quote. So we might begin with our lead in sentence that says Lunsford. So here we're naming our author. Acknowledges that while there is a popular notion among students that correctness is rigid and enduring, those in academia understand that rules constantly undergo change. Obviously, this is not a direct quote, so we do not need to have quotation marks. Instead, inside our parenthetical citation, we're just going to put the page number 1. And again, as with the quotes, if we don't want to use the author's name first in a lead-in sentence, then we're just going to give the paraphrase. While there's a popular notion among students that correctness is rigid and enduring, those in academia understand that rules are constantly undergo change, right? So we give the paraphrase, and then in the parenthetical citation, we will put Lunsford 1. So just like the paraphrases act just like quotes when we introduce them into our in-text citation. So we have to introduce the author and the page number from which we're finding this material. Okay, so what we saw previously works good for quotation that are less than 4 lines, or I should say 4 lines or less. So what that means is if you can go from the left margin to the right margin of your Word document and it is 4 lines all the way across, then you would use the quotation style that we just saw. However, the minute you hit the 5th line, we have to do what's called block quotes. And so it's formatted a bit differently. And so some of the major things that are going to happen is first you're going to indent your quote. So you're just going to take the entire quote and you're going to tab it once. You will remove quotation marks. The fact that it is being tabbed and indented means that this is a quote. So people recognize that as a quote. So you do not need quotation marks. And then the period is going to occur before the parenthetical citation. This is different from what we saw before. I don't know if you noticed that detail, but it's there. And I'll show you on the following slide what that's going to look like. So here's an example of a block quote with a lead-in. So according to Lunsford, so we've cited our name, rules are not meant to be rigid, but are something that change over time. And so notice that instead of a comma, we have a colon, and then we have our block quote, right? So we've indented the quote, we've brought it in, and then the quote continues, and then the period, normally the period you would see in a regular quote right there, right? It would be right after your parenthetical citation. But in a block quote, that's not what happens. You have the period right here, right after the quote, and then you have your parenthetical citation, page 1. So your page number. Okay. So what if, say for example, we decided not to use the lead-in sentence? So same thing as before, you're seeing the same pattern. You would give your lead-in sentence without the author's name. So rules are not meant to be rigid, but something that can change over time. So what we're seeing here is, yes, we have our colon, and then we have our indent, and then you have your period there. But now we've added the name of the author, Lunsford, in the parenthetical citation with a space, and then your page number. Okay, so all of this comes to, and this is a picture from that textbook I was talking about. You don't need to see this up close. If you look at any Works Cited MLA, you'll see this, but this is just kind of to get the point across. So what we see here is we have the name Crystal, right? And so we put that in our in-text citation, and that's going to guide us to right here where we see crystal again. And so when we see that, we're able to look through the rest of the citation and get all the information from where this quote came from. And so that's why we do it. And again, here's an example here of an author right there. This was seen in text, and then the full citation is given in the Works Cited page. Okay, so one detail worth noting is that suppose you have a rather long quote and only parts of it do you need, but there's material in between those parts that you would like to not include because they're either redundant, irrelevant, or not helpful to what you're trying to say. You can omit those, but you're going to use an ellipses. And so we see that highlighted right here with the yellow highlight. The ellipses is the 3 dots, so basically 3 periods in a row. And that indicates to the reader that you have deleted something. So you have taken parts of the quote out and kind of used only the parts that you're looking for. So that's a nice trick to use if you have a particular long quote with bits kind of all over, but you only want to use parts of them. So you would use an ellipses. That being said, I would shy away from using more than 2 or 3 ellipses in a single quote because your instructor is probably going to wonder what is it that you're omitting or taking out of the quote, and may go up and look up the quote themselves. Okay, and so that is it. I will say thank you all for watching. If you have any questions about this, please feel free to email me, and be sure to watch the other videos, or I should say lectures, in this week's material.